Not so long ago, Volodymyr Zelensky was a comedian in Ukraine. He made his living playing the piano with his pennies to entertain the public on TV. Then, handpicked and propped up by Victoria Nuland, who was a state secretary in the United States, and her CIA team, they organized the Maidan coup and imposed Zelensky on the people of Ukraine as their president. And before he could have some time to adjust to the rule, history threw him into the world stage, catapulting him from a middling, clownish entertainer into an international symbol of resistance. Hello and welcome again to the Edge of Politics podcast. Geopolitical Queen here with today's episode on a dictator who is scared of peace because of his selfish interest. So how did this tragedy happen? Overnight, the Western media transformed Zelensky into the embodiment of courage, the Churchill of Kiev, the George Washington of the US, the man who refused to flee, the warrior standing against tyranny, and several of such meaningless accolades. But what if this narrative was entirely false? What if Zelensky, rather than being the hero in the story, is actually the man who won't allow the war to end? Not for the good of his people, but because peace would mean his own downfall. A good leader prioritizes the survival of his nation. He knows when to fight, and most importantly, he knows when to negotiate. Zelensky, however, has made it clear that his power depends on war and war alone. It is therefore no coincidence that as Ukraine's battlefield prospects worsen, as soldiers defect, as forced conscription spirals into something resembling kidnapping, Zelensky has once again extended martial law. No elections, no peace talks, no escape, because if the war ends, so does his presidency. And this, more than anything, explains why the war must go on. The mainstream media, particularly the Western media, does not allow for nuances. The world must be simple. Putin is the villain, Zelensky is the hero. That is the framework. That is the script. Anything outside of this binary is pro-Russian propaganda. Yet, reality is not a comic book. It's not a Marvel movie. Zelensky is not some saintly soldier defending democracy. In fact, Ukraine has nothing to do with democracy at all. Since Russia's special military operation in 2022, Zelensky has banned several opposition parties, banned certain media outlets, and postponed elections with the justification that wartime voting is impossible. But impossible for whom? For the soldiers in the trenches, or for the civilians now living under indefinite martial law? Ukraine is in a desperate position. The country's losses are catastrophic. Manpower is running thin, which is why Zelensky has resorted to hunting down men down the streets. There are countless reports of Ukrainian men being dragged from cafes and nightclubs and thrown into vans like criminals. Martial law means there is no way out. You cannot leave the country. You cannot refuse any government instructions. This is not the mark of a confident government. This is the behavior of a desperate regime trying to hold itself together by force. And yet, the war must continue. It is the only thing keeping Zelensky in power. If he were to call elections, he would likely lose. Support for him is falling. The longer this drags on, the more obvious it becomes that Ukraine cannot win this war, at least not in any meaningful sense. We are now in 2025, and the optimism of those early months in 2022, when the world believed Ukraine would push Russia back, is long gone. Even the United States, Ukraine's biggest backer, is slowly dialing down support, with Washington insiders admitting that a total Ukrainian victory as envisaged can no longer be the goal. The Zelensky saga is not new. History is filled with leaders who refused to let go, clinging to power even as their nations crumbled around them. There was once upon a time a Napoleon Bonaparte who, after leading France to disaster in Russia, could have accepted the inevitable. Instead, he chose more war, dragging his exhausted nation into further bloodshed before his final exile. Then there was an Adolf Hitler, who also, after invading Poland, could have settled down to rule his country. But he also chose to go on to attack the Soviet Union, of which the Soviets pushed back and caused his exit from the world. Ukraine is being fed into a meat grinder. Yet, perversely, the illusion must be maintained. And the media, ever so compliant, helps sell the fiction with headlines such as "The Indomitable Zelensky," "The Unbreakable Ukraine," and "The Noble Fight for Democracy." It is a clean, simple story, easy to digest and easy to justify. Another weapons shipment and another aid package, which only leads to another extension of a catastrophic conflict which should have ended long ago. But the fact is, objective reality does not care for emotionally charged narratives. It is cold and ruthless. And the hard truth is, Ukraine is losing, and Zelensky is making sure Ukraine keeps losing. A rational leader would have seen the writing on the wall, confronted the inevitable, and made the painful but necessary choice to negotiate, to salvage what remains rather than reduce the nation to nothing but ashes. But Zelensky has chosen a different path, one so often walked by men drunk on power and blind to consequences. And for that, Ukraine will bleed until there is no blood left to spill. So what do you think? Did the media turn Zelensky into a callous dictator, or he is just drunk with power? Well, kindly leave your comments in the comment section below, and thanks for tuning in. I will be back with the next podcast. Good day.